Ever noticed that the price of your favorite snack keeps going up? Or that your rent is higher than last year? That's inflation in action. Today we're going to break down what inflation is, why it happens, and how it affects you. Inflation is essentially the erosion of purchasing power over time. It means that your money can buy less today than it could yesterday. Imagine money as a ruler. If the ruler shrinks, everything you measure with it appears larger. With inflation, your money shrinks, making the price of goods and services appear larger. There are two primary ways to conceptualize inflation. 1. Price increase. This is the most straightforward understanding. Inflation means the general level of prices for goods and services in an economy is rising. So, that cup of coffee you bought for $2 last week might cost $2.10 this week. Point 2. Decreased purchasing power. This perspective focuses on what your money can buy. If inflation is 3%, it means your money can buy 3% less than it could a year ago. This is often expressed as a decline in the purchasing power of money. It's important to note that a little bit of inflation is generally considered healthy for an economy. It encourages spending and investment. However, high inflation, often referred to as a hyperinflation, can be detrimental, as it erodes savings and makes economic planning difficult. Causes of inflation. The persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services, can stem from various economic factors. Two primary culprits are demand pull and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation arises when the overall demand for goods and services in an economy outpaces the supply. This surge in demand can be triggered by factors such as increased consumer spending, government expenditure, or investment. As businesses struggle to meet this heightened demand, they often respond by raising prices, fueling inflationary pressures. Conversely, cost push inflation occurs when the cost of producing goods and services increases. This can be attributed to factors like rising wages, higher energy prices, or increased raw material costs. Businesses may pass these elevated costs onto consumers in the form of higher prices, contributing to inflation. Beyond these core drivers, other factors can also influence inflation. For instance, monetary policy plays a crucial role. When a central bank injects excessive amounts of money into the economy, it can lead to inflation. Additionally, supply shocks, such as natural disasters or geopolitical tensions disrupting production, can contribute to inflationary pressures by restricting supply and driving up prices. It's important to note that inflation is often a complex interplay of these factors, and the relative importance of each can vary across different economic conditions. Understanding these causes is essential for policymakers and individuals alike to develop effective strategies to manage inflation. To accurately gauge the rate at which prices are increasing, economists rely on a metric known as a price index. This is essentially a statistical measure that tracks changes in the average price of a specific basket of goods and services over time. One of the most widely used indices is the Consumer Price Index, CPI. The CPI is calculated by surveying prices of a representative sample of goods and services consumed by households. These items range from food and housing to transportation and healthcare. By comparing the price of this basket of goods in different periods, economists can determine the overall rate of inflation. However, it's important to note that the CPI has its limitations. Firstly, it's a fixed basket of goods, which means it doesn't account for changes in consumer behavior. For instance, if people switch from beef to chicken due to rising beef prices, the CPI might overstate inflation. Secondly, the CPI might not accurately reflect the spending patterns of different income groups. What's considered essential for a low-income household might differ significantly from a high-income household. Finally, technological advancements and the introduction of new products can complicate the measurement of inflation. While the CPI remains a valuable tool, it's crucial to consider its limitations when interpreting inflation data. Other price indices, such as the Producer Price Index, PPI, and the Personal Consumption Expenditure, PCE Index, are also used to measure inflation from different perspectives. The PPI focuses on prices paid by domestic producers for goods and services, while the PCE Index tracks the spending habits of consumers. Inflation, while often seen as an economic statistic, has tangible effects on everyday life. Its influence ripples through various aspects of our financial well-being. One of the most immediate impacts is on purchasing power. As prices rise, the value of your money diminishes. This means your paycheck can buy less than before, forcing you to make tough choices about spending. For instance, if the cost of groceries increases significantly, you might have to cut back on other expenses. Inflation also affects saving and investing. If the rate of inflation outpaces your savings interest rate, the real value of your savings decreases over time. Similarly, investments that don't outpace inflation can see their returns eroded. This can impact retirement planning and long-term financial goals. Another crucial area influenced by inflation is interest rates. Central banks often adjust interest rates to control inflation. When inflation rises, central banks tend to increase interest rates to cool down the economy. This can affect borrowing costs for individuals and businesses, making loans more expensive. Furthermore, inflation can impact wage growth. If wages don't keep pace with inflation, workers experience a decline in their standard of living. This can lead to increased pressure for higher wages, potentially fueling a wage price spiral. While moderate inflation is generally considered healthy for an economy, high inflation can destabilize it. It can lead to uncertainty, reduced consumer confidence, and challenges for businesses. Conversely, very low inflation or deflation can also be problematic, as it can discourage spending and investment. Understanding the impact of inflation is essential for making informed financial decisions. By being aware of how inflation affects your purchasing power, savings, and investments, you can take steps to protect your financial well-being. Understanding inflation is essential for making informed financial decisions. While it can be a complex economic concept, grasping its basics empowers you to navigate the ever-changing economic landscape. By recognizing the factors that contribute to inflation, its impact on your purchasing power, and the role of central banks in managing it, you can develop strategies to protect your wealth. Remember, inflation is a normal part of the economic cycle. However, when inflation rates become excessively high or low, it can destabilize the economy. That's why policymakers closely monitor inflation and implement measures to keep it within a target range. To mitigate the effects of inflation, consider diversifying your investments, exploring inflation index bonds, and being mindful of your spending habits. While inflation can erode the value of your money over time, proper financial planning can help you stay ahead of the curve. Ultimately, staying informed about economic trends and making well-informed decisions is crucial in today's world. By understanding inflation, you're taking a significant step toward achieving your financial goals. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll dive deeper into the relationship between inflation and interest rates.